Good evening and welcome. Tonight is Monday, August 9th, 2021. It is 7 o'clock p.m. This is the regular City Council meeting for the City of St. Peter. We will call the meeting to order. Would all please join in the Pledge of Allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone should have a copy of the agenda. Are there any changes, corrections to the agenda? Seeing none, is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Edel second.
All in favor of the agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. Next, we have the minutes from our July 26, 2021 meeting. Those minutes appear on pages 5 and 6. Are there any changes or corrections to those minutes? If not, is there a motion for approval?
Edel make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor of the minutes as written, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? These minutes are approved. Next, we will address visitors. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the council on any agenda item? Seeing no one, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the council on any matter whatsoever? Seeing no one, we will move to the consent agenda. The consent agenda begins in detail on page 7 and concludes with the resolution on page 21 and includes the following budgeted purchases in excess of $10,000 to Berger Interiors for City Hall carpet replacement for $10,700. To Joel Schmidt, this is the employee appointment for maintenance supervisor. And Todd, did you have a correction on that?
Mayor, members, I do have an error on page 8 is the memo for that, and you'll see in the body of the memo that it says $75,500. That's the correct amount. It also says in the memo $75,000 even, but the correct amount is $75,500, and that should be in the resolution on page 21, Mr. Mayor. I apologize for that error.
Okay. So there's a change on the on Mr. Schmidt for his starting salary of it should be $75,700. $500.
Yep.
Thank you. Plus the regular schedule of disbursements for July 22nd, 2021 through August 4th, 2021. With that change, or first of all, are there any questions or comments concerning the consent agenda? If not, with that one change from $75,000 to $75,500 for the salary, is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments now? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Bluefett.
Aye.
Councilmember Harry Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. Next, we have unfinished business, which we have none, so we will move right to new business. And the first thing up is the local option sales tax ballot question. And Todd.
Mayor, members, the council have worked on, I guess what I consider this overall project for 4 or 5 years now. In front of you tonight is the resolution providing for the sales tax, a half-cent sales tax, to be on the general election ballot this November. As the council's discussed on many occasions, you've been through a process related to the fire station project with consultants, planning, budgeting, civil engineering, financial arrangements, all kinds of different things. Let me talk just about a few of those. First of all, you've expended about $600,000 to date on this project. You have been very fortunate to receive approval from the USDA Rural Development for a very, very low interest loan at 2.25%. The current budget for this project is approximately $9.4 million. Different than what we told you 6 months ago. The data now says that if you put this on the ballot and the voters approve a sales tax, that sales tax should cover all the debt service for this facility. Previously, you may recall that we talked about generally a 2/3, 1/3 split, so 2/3 sales tax, 1/3 property tax. Now sales tax should cover the entire debt service, which is approximately $385,000 per year based on the budget that you have in place currently. Again, Mayor members, I could talk for a long time about this. You have talked on many occasions and for a long time about this. But the real salient point here is included in the resolution, which provides for this to be placed on the ballot. And it provides on page 38 and 39 the question, how the ballot will look, and other information that may be necessary to meet the legal requirements to make this happen.
Okay. Unless I misunderstood, I think you said the debt service is 380, isn't the debt service 358?
Let me double check here, Mr. Mayor. I think we had approximately 380-ish.
That was the sales tax revenue, Ted.
Yeah.
But I think our debt service is 358, 900 or something like that. Sally might have the, yeah, Sally. has
Thank
the-
you, Sally.
Okay. Just so, people watching, that's what our debt service per year would be.
358, 800.
Yes. Any questions about this? Todd presented, what we've been going through for quite a while. I was not there last Monday, but I know you guys discussed, some of that then. But if you have questions, Carrie.
We discussed this at the workshop, but I think something for those watching at home, what might be helpful is what changed. So we thought the sales tax would cover 2/3 of the debt service before. What changed from then to now? I thought you gave a good explanation, or Sally did at the last meeting. Could you
The
speak to
significant
that
change
again?
that we've seen is sales in town have gone up, so the data is a little bit newer. We have not used 2020 data because of COVID, right? The reason for a lot of things. But this is the latest and best number that we have that's provided by the Minnesota Department of Revenue.
Thank you.
Todd, on here, on page 23 in the memo, it says current budget is 9.4 million, but then when we go back to a sample of the ballot and on the previous page, in part of the resolution, it says 9,121,000,
Yes.
which is right.
Well,
Or are they both right?
They are both right, Mr. Mayor. They're both articulating different things. So the 9.4 is the overall budget that we have in the project, including hard and soft costs. But the amount that you see on the ballot is what was approved by the state legislature. Now, there are a couple of reasons for that, and we can talk about the overall financing mechanism for this. But some of this relates to the sales tax exemption on the materials that you have in place as well. And so at these numbers, you are on target to have enough resources and have a budget that makes sense relative to the amount of revenue stream that you're going to have.
Okay. I have another question. The 600, on page 23, the 600,000 that we've already expended,
Yep.
will we be reimbursed if we take out a loan for 9,121,000?
Yes.
So that'll be reimbursed and we can.
Yep. Unless things go really, become a real big challenge as a part of the bid or the construction itself.
Okay,
Yeah, but that is included in the financing.
okay. So, got that. All right. Any, Mr. Johnson?
Sales tax is based on 19, I take it. And of course, 20, we had COVID and stuff like that. Let's say we get all this fire station built and stuff like that, and we have another year where we don't take in as much sales tax money.
Sure.
What happens there?
Well, really what will happen is that your finance department, Sally, will establish a fund for those sales tax proceeds. And so you are likely to collect, or potentially, let's say we have a down year or two. In years where you're up, you'll likely collect a little bit more. You put that in your fund. On years when you're down, you can draw on that fund to make it go. But overall, you'll be able to collect that amount of money. You could see a challenge on a year-by-year basis, or you might be a few $1,000s short, as an example. And certainly you can pay that out of the general fund and repay yourself with future sales tax proceeds. So that's part of what goes on.
So there is a safety net there.
You do have the ability to provide a safety net for yourself. I think it's also important to remember that the information that we're giving you is based on really one snapshot in time. And the likelihood that total sales within your community are going to drop dramatically for an extended period of time, I would argue is relatively low. You're going to continue to see inflationary forces that occur. And so the amount of sales tax that you collect today versus the amount of sales tax you collect, say, 10 years from now, will be different, but your debt service will be flat.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, the resolution. calling for an election on a sales and use tax for city new fire station project. Appears on page 38 with a ballot exhibit on page 39. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved. Second.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Mayor Seaman.
Aye.
Councilmember Bluefett.
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Doyle.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have a call for public hearing for tax increment financing for District Number 123. Russ and Mr. Shannon are here and lead us off, and we will go from there.
Yeah, Mayor Zeman, I wasn't aware that Shannon was going to be here, so I'm going to defer to Shannon.
I didn't see his name anywhere either, and I was kind of surprised when I came in.
fill in as necessary, perhaps.
All right.
Like a bad penny, Mayor. Just keep turning up.
I go more like a bad cold.
All right.
All right, thanks, Shannon, for being here.
Thank you. Mayor and members of the council, before you is a resolution that calls for a public hearing to create a tax increment financing district that will ultimately collect new property taxes associated with an expansion at the Creative Technologies facility in your community. That facility is owned by Traverse DeSue Enterprises LLC, a private development company that has owned that building and operated it for a number of years and leased it to Creation Technologies for the business that they do. Ultimately, they've asked for some assistance for the expansion project, and that assistance would equate to about half of the tax increment or new property tax generated as a result of the expansion for a period of 9 years. The city would be able to retain the balance of that increment and use it for administrative purposes and ultimately, and more importantly, for additional improvements in the vicinity of the Creation Technologies facility, additional public improvements to roads and infrastructure. So we think it's a good trade-off in order to provide some level of assistance so that they can expand the tax base and the number of jobs that are housed at that facility, and we're able to capture some new property tax and use it to enhance our ability to create more tax base. And so ultimately, this process involves calling a public hearing, which would be held a couple of months out. We would draft a tax increment plan that would establish a budget and the boundaries for the TIF district. We would provide that tax increment plan to the county and school district and invite them to attend the public hearing and comment as they see fit on the proposed tax increment district, because they are impacted and that we're capturing a portion of their property tax as well. At the end of the day, we think they'll see the benefit associated with the new jobs and tax base in the community, and we probably won't receive much comment, which has been typical in the past, but you never know. They are given the opportunity to be here and comment. But for tonight's purposes, what you're being asked is to call that public hearing. You're not taking action this evening to obligate yourself to do anything. But I'd remind you that at your upcoming meeting about 2 months from now, you will be asked to act on a development agreement that will put what we're talking about in place with regard to a subsidy and the capture of increment to do some additional public improvements. And so with that, if you have specific requests for information on the company itself, Russ has some very good data with regard to number of jobs and payroll and all those good things. But again, this evening we're calling a public hearing, so more than happy to answer questions.
Okay. Mine anyway says September 27th.
Yes.
Would be the meeting that we would be discussing.
That's
Russ, as long as you hear you have information, let's let everybody know what's going on.
Well, thank you, Mayor. It was our pleasure in 2009 to assist Creation Technologies when they relocated out into the industrial park from their former facility at Rich Street, which is now owned by Spring Touch. At that point, Traverse DeSue Enterprises was created solely to own this real estate and to lease it back to Creation Technology. And I believe to this date, that's the only piece of real estate that that entity has in their portfolio. They made some promises when they relocated out there. They promised that they would add 24 jobs and that they would have 116 jobs after 24 months. As you probably may have read, they are at about 230 employees at this point, and an immediate need for about 20 additional if they could find them tomorrow. When they moved out, or when they left the Ritt Street facility, their annual utility, water, sewer, and electrical, was about $84,000. Last year in 2020, their annual utility usage was $153,000. So not quite doubled. As I said, they pledged to be 116, but when they moved out there, they had 85 employees, full-time equivalents with a payroll of $3,463,000. And today, they're at 230 full-time equivalents with a payroll of $8.138 million. Also, obviously, the real estate taxes have gone up with the construction of the facility. And as we say in the economic development field, that's the trifecta. New taxes, new utilities, and new jobs. So it's been an honor to help them. They've asked for our assistance again. As you're well aware, that they've made strides in assisting some of our newest neighbors in their employment needs, which they have been and should be committed. And also, it was reported that this investment was either St. Peter, Minnesota, or Dallas, Texas. And so with the assistance of Traverse Day Sioux Enterprises and them turning around any of the savings we provide them into a lease savings, we've been able to garner that investment for the St. Peter area. So I'd answer any other questions, Mayor, that you may have, or members of the council.
All right, questions for Russ or Shannon? Shannon has a question?
One more comment.
Yeah.
Just to be absolutely clear, the property taxes and benefits that we now enjoy from the existing facility will continue to flow to the city, county, and school district. We're only capturing new taxes associated with the expansion to the facility.
Okay. All right.
And I also should add, there's also a $200,000 0% revolving loan that would be requested of the EDA and City Council that would be considered. I'm assuming we'll have that ready by the 27th also.
Do we know what their total costs will be? I mean, as far as any of this yet?
I don't know what the total construction costs are. I know there's about $460,000 in eligible tax increment expenses that they'd identify. So
Okay.
that's basically almost everything except tilting up walls and the interior finish.
I have another question, but if somebody else has something first.
I
Emily?
do. As far as tax increment goes, there's a cap as far as how many years that can be in place, is that correct? Will this be considered for the full amount, or will it be ended sooner? Just out of curiosity.
Half the increment for the full term.
Okay.
So they're taking half the revenue, but the full term of 9 years.
Okay.
In this instance. If you recall, housing districts, redevelopment districts can go for up to 26 years. This is an economic development TIF district with a maximum life of 9 years of collection.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Carrie?
Does the company have a current loan with the EDA open?
The company does not have a loan.
Okay.
Traverse Day Sioux had a loan. I know the tax increment's been paid in full. It was a 15-year note. It's 2019. There'd be a small balance left on that
Okay.
note, I believe. And they make semi-annual payments. Basically, as they get their semi-annual TIF payment, they turn around and make a loan payment.
So
to
if we're
us.
looking at the EDA spreadsheet, it would be under Traverse Day Sioux
Enterprises, yes, ma'am.
And I looked at it today, but I can't remember what that balance was, but I know.
It's small, and like I said, they make semi-annual payments.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Russ, you had mentioned 230 employees. Do they share, or do we know how many of those have a St. Peter address? Not necessarily live in town, but a St. Peter address.
They have not shared that. I've not asked. Sometimes it's not difficult to ask if they could run their payroll by zip code. You know, we've done that to some of the large employer. I guess they're getting to be a large employer in town.
I'd be curious.
Okay.
You know, if you can obtain that information, and you don't have to share it in public, but, you know, if you could email it out to us, I'd appreciate that.
I can ask if they would
Okay.
divulge that, yeah.
All right, great. Anyone else? If not, the call for public hearing for tax increment financing district number 1-23 appears on pages 41 on page 41 only. Thank you. Is there a motion for approval?
That'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
Any other questions or comments? I'm going to change this a little bit. It doesn't affect anything, but there is an exhibit that's attached to the resolution, so that was on page 41. If there are no other questions, roll please, Barb.
Councilmember Blumenthal.
Aye.
Councilmember Gary Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Zimmerman.
Aye. Resolution is approved. Thank you, gentlemen. Shannon, thanks for coming down, appreciate it. Next up, we have a request for city assistance for Rock Bend Folk Festival. Todd.
Mayor members, starting on page 45, you'll see a request for assistance letter provided by the Rock Bend Folk Festival volunteer group. The memo is included on page 43 and outlines really very similar requests and actions on the part of the city to provide assistance for the Rock Bend Folk Festival to be held on September 11th and 12th. Some of the big things that are required certainly are appropriate level of restrooms, garbage, recycling, insurance, the $1.5 million in insurance, permission to use electricity from the pavilion, using the stage from the pavilion, those types of things. And John Gainey has submitted that letter. The resolution on page 48 and 49 outlines the things that they are planning to do and the things that we are planning to do with your approval. And again, this is very similar to what you've seen over the last number of years from Rock Bend Folk Festival. One of the other things that I'd like to mention is that we do ask them to announce and make sure that their promotional activities say, no dogs in the park during these kind of events. And so they do a good job with that, and usually you'll see that on their posters and some of their advertising as well. And if I didn't mention it, Mayor members, they are required to provide the $1.5 million of insurance, which they have done faithfully in the past, and I have no doubt we'll get that certificate of insurance. Barb, I don't think we have it yet, but generally it comes about a week before the event. And so we have full faith and confidence that will occur the same for this year. Mr. Mayor?
Okay, questions? Emily.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am curious if the planners for the event have taken the new Delta strain of COVID into effect in their planning. Will they implement or suggest any masking or anything like that? Do you have any information about that at this time?
I cannot speak directly to that issue related to the Delta variant of the COVID-19, but I do know that they have had multiple discussions about safety, and I know that's translated into discussion about correct number of porta potties, hand washing stations, those types of things, but I can't speak directly to your question. Certainly I could contact them about that, but again, can't speak directly to that question.
I would just be interested if they'd have those conversations, because a lot can change between now and a month from now. So I'm just kind of curious if they have a plan in place if things do get worse.
Sure.
Or if they get better, too. We can look at it that way. Any other questions or comments? If not, the resolution authorizing city assistance for Rock Bend Folk Festival appears on pages 48 and 49. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Any other questions or comments at this time? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Gary Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Zimmerman.
Aye.
Councilmember Blumenthal.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have the intersection traffic evaluation for Sunrise and Broadway, and Mr. Moulton is here.
Mayor and members, as you guys are aware, we have received some funding that we are applied for, grant funding through LRIP. And part of our situation is that we need to do an intersection evaluation to find out what kind of traffic and pedestrian traffic we are going to experience at the intersection of Broadway and Sunrise Drive. Intersection control evaluation is an ICE study, and Bolton and Mink has been retained to do that. Their transportation planning group will be brought in to evaluate that. Really what we're looking for is what is going to be the best method of intersection control for the future growth of the citizens of St. Peter. We do have 2 schools in that vicinity, so we want to evaluate not only the traffic but the pedestrian movements. We want to take that existing traffic patterns that we're seeing right now and evaluate the efficiencies of those We'll also take that and analyze different alternatives. And so what we'll do is we'll have the project management team get together and discuss some of the options that go along with how we get people from A to B and through that intersection. The Nicollet County will be a participant with us. They do own one of the legs, the west leg coming off of that, as you guys remember. Similar to what we did with the roundabout out there at the high school. We did a nice study, I should say, Nicollet County did, and we participated with that to find out what the best method of traffic, transportation, and pedestrian traffic would be. Once we get all of the information pulled together, the ICE documents will be brought together, reviewed with the project management team. Our goal would be to start in September, work our way through December, have something close to finished by the end of the year. Bring that information back and review that with the council in the early part of 2022. You can see the costs that are identified there. It ends up being about $27,400. And as I mentioned, the county will participate with us based on the amount of legs that are brought in. The city will be 3 legs, the county will be 1 leg. And then from that point, we will develop a scope of work that works for us moving forward. There is a resolution on page 54, and I would entertain any questions.
Questions for Mr. Moulton? Carrie?
So when we are done with the study, and I'm assuming we share it with the county, and if there's an improvement to their leg, is there any way to misinterpret or have differences of opinion on the study results, and how do we work that out with them?
Yeah, there's always a way for some of the information, but they do have traffic people or transportation people on their staff, so we'll work closely with them through the study. We will present to them, just like we will present to the city council the findings of the group, and we'll probably be of one mind when we come in for that review.
Very good, thank you.
Anyone else? Emily?
Pete, do you have any idea, going into it, how the fire hall will impact, since that's going to be at that same intersection? Take that into consideration, like the size of the vehicles and the need to get through
Absolutely.
that area?
Yeah, absolutely, that'll be part of the consideration. It's also important that as we grow into the fire hall situation, as that develops over the next year and a half, that the construction schedules would match up, so whatever that improvement is, we'll need to take that into consideration.
When we did the planning for the fire hall, which, you know, the changes can be made, but when we did the planning for that, the roundabout potential was taken into effect at that time. So that's all drawn out and all ready to go, unless there's some major change that somebody comes up with, but otherwise, that should be ready. Anyone else? If not, the resolution authorizing a traffic intersection control evaluation at Broadway Avenue and Sunrise Drive appears on page 54 and 55. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second?
Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Noel?
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson?
Aye.
Mayor Zimmerman?
Aye.
Councilmember Ruffat?
Aye.
Councilmember Sharon Johnson?
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have Mr. Moulton again for the 361st Avenue right-of-way plat engineering.
Mayor and members, we're asking tonight that you authorize Bolton and Mink to do some preliminary engineering in the amount of $56,000 for work to be done on 361st Avenue between Broadway Avenue and Traverse Road, which is County Road 5 and County Road 51. Right now, that is currently a gravel roadway. The city is currently maintaining that for the townships. But we did apply for funding through the townships and received $1.25 million in LR, Local Road Improvement Program funding. The key with this is we will do survey work out there, do a preliminary design, look for title reports, prepare all the documents, do some right-of-way plat preparation. But one of the things that I made a mistake on during the memo is the financial impact. We will have to fund that up front. LRIP funding is not used for the engineering on this portion of the platting and getting the right-of-way done, so That was my mistake on that. Once it becomes part of the municipal state aid process or program that we have, we can recoup the engineering for that. So our main goal with Bolton and Mink at this time would get that prepared for purchase. Right away would go over to the city. During that process, we'd also be working on preliminary design for your review, and then we would annex the property in once purchased and develop a roadway. And
Okay.
this is the engineering that it'll take to get us there.
Right.
There's a map on page 58 for your review and a resolution on page 59.
All right. Questions for Mr. Moulton? I know you described where they started and stopped at, but anybody watching, it is the gravel road to the west of the high school, right below the bluff, I guess people would call it. Any other questions or comments? Not the resolution authorizing preliminary engineering and right-of-way plat for the improvement of 361st Avenue from Broadway to Traverse Road. County Road 51 is referred to, is on page 59. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Zimmern.
Aye.
Councilmember Ruffin.
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Resolution is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Next up, we have a request for assistance for a Day of Hope. Todd?
Mayor members, this is a new event that is looking to be scheduled within Minnesota Square Park. It's being organized by local folks with sponsorships from local churches and a main sponsorship from a church in Mankato. The organizers, we've met with the organizers, Pete and the police chief and I and others have met with this group to make sure that they're covering all the bases that need to be covered. And so they're seeking authorization to utilize the park on August 21st from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Certainly utilize the restrooms, have access to the supplies, use electricity from the pavilion, be issued a key so that they could have a small amount of vehicular traffic to move equipment in and out. Their goal is to provide not just music, but for other activities within the park. And we would establish or put up the stage for them. They're requesting the stage be put in place. This is a larger event. It started out relatively small and it's grown now for this group. And they're new to this, so we're trying to help them along. And so your patience with us and with them is appreciated because this is really their first time out, and so they're kind of figuring this out a little bit as they go. But certainly they have to provide the insurance that's necessary, porta potties and hand washing stations as necessary. Clean up the park as is required by all the users going forward, and some of those porta potties and hand washing stations need to be handicap accessible. We think that this can go off very well, certainly depending on the weather, and they're very, very excited. There's not a lot of work that is on our part, depending on how large this grows to. Originally, they thought they might have a couple hundred people. Now it's grown to maybe more than 500 or 1,000, so we'll see. Wow. The plans might have to change a little bit based on churches that are reporting back to the organizing group about how many of their congregants are planning to attend and what they're planning to do. So again, Mayor and members, the information is included on your packet with a resolution on page 63. They've moved very quickly, and in this instance, we do have the certificate of insurance in our hands for this activity. And again, local people, so we'll continue to work with them to try and make it a success, not only for them, but certainly for the community, while taking care of the park appropriately.
Great. Questions? Emily?
Todd, you said that the event organizer is from Mankato, or the sponsor, is that right?
Actually, the organizers are from St. Peter,
Okay.
and a number of churches in our area, including in St. Peter, are participating. But my understanding is one of the primary sponsors is a church in Mankato. That's my understanding based on the organizer's discussion with me and based on who's providing the certificate of insurance for the event.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I've heard a lot about this through my work and just wanting to know more about it because we've been kind of in the dark a little bit about the event, even, yeah.
These are definitely new organizers, but they are very passionate about wanting to make this go,
Sure.
and they've been very accepting of the experience that we've had with other groups in making sure that they can meet the requirements, whether it's safety or sanitation or vendors or whatever it might be. They've been very accepting of that and trying to make that move forward.
Thank you, Todd.
Anyone else? I will say, Todd, for the 45 years or so that I've been here, every event that's been successful, you said the key word, passion.
Yeah.
You know, it just really comes through when people get involved and really get passionate about what they're doing. So kudos to them. I guess I shouldn't say that before we voted on it, should I? I don't want to influence anybody's vote. The resolution authorizing city assistance for a Day of Hope event appears on page 63. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Bluefett.
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Doyle.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have an ADA Grant Program awards, I guess. Mr. Willie.
Yeah, Mayor Zeman, members of the council, we're a little behind schedule as compared to the previous year on seeking your approval for the Central Business District American with Disabilities Accessibility Enhancement Loan/Grant Program. As you'll recall that this was envisioned by the City Council at a goal session in 2019. We implemented a project for 2020 after a recommendation from the EDA. And at that time, 3 projects were funded. They were all the installation of an automatic door opening system. To push the button, the door automatically glides open. Given the perceived success of the 2020 program, it was reauthorized for 2021. We advertised, had public meetings. We took applications through February. This year, there's been a little bit more back and forth with some of them requiring more HPC review than in the previous year because they're actually changing the doorway, the physical doorway, and the hardware and all of that. But ultimately, after review by an ad hoc committee and the HPC and then the EDA, the recommendation would be to fund 5 of the applications. That would include Aero Commercial Properties, which is the hardware store, Nicollet Hotel, this would be the door on the southern facade across from the Aero Ace offices. The Redmond Club, this would be a replacement of the rear door and the installation of an automatic opening system. Nicollet Lodge, number 54, Masons, it says Nutters, but that's also Cooks and Company. The Masons own the building, and that is only the Minnesota Avenue facade accesses. And then with Nutters, it's only the southern one of their 2 storefronts since they don't utilize the northern storefront. If something should happen and the property be used for other purposes or repurposed, they could also perhaps seek application at that point. At that point, it was suggested that perhaps we were done, but the Aero Ace was sent back to the EDA, and we anticipated that their alteration would have more savings. So it was recommended that the foot and ankle clinic be included, but as I explained in the memo, that takes us about $7,000 plus over the established budget. So if it's approved, rather than just utilizing the interest income from 2020, this would then expend $7,000 of the principal within the fund, of which there are hundreds of thousands of dollars. So perhaps it could be absorbed with minimum impact, perhaps would be my suggestion. Mayor, that's the recommendation from the EDA and the ad hoc committee with approval of the HPC, and I'd answer any questions that you or members may have.
Okay, questions for Russ? Russ, and I read this, but maybe I'm not understanding. So you had 8 applicants?
Yep.
And 3 did not get approved.
3 were not recommended for
Not
this
recommended.
funding cycle. They'd
So
have the
how was that conveyed to them for future?
It was, I talked to each of them individually rather than send a letter, suggested a couple options. One, that they could assume that there's going to be a program for next year and apply for a competitive program, though it would still be competitive, or that they could seek the financing through the other program, or we would do 50% forgivability, because that's just a regular revolving loan.
Okay.
The 3 at this point have not suggested that they would do that at this point, but perhaps wait and see if the project's reauthorized for 2022. Sure.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? If not, the resolution approving Central Business District Accessibility Improvement grant awards to Aero Commercial Properties, Nicollet Hotel, Redmond Club, Nicollet Lodge, number 54 Masons, and the Foot and Ankle Clinic appears on page 66. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Any other questions? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Bluefett?
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Doyle?
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson?
Aye.
Mayor Seymour?
Aye. That concludes, thanks, Russ. That concludes our new business. Next, we'll go to reports. Todd, I saw by your list that therefore I don't have anything, and I may interject on some of yours, but go ahead.
Mayor, members, I do want to mention that we had previously scheduled a city-county liaison meeting, and that's been rescheduled to September 1st. So that impacts Councilmember Carrie Johnson and Mayor Zeman now, I believe. Are you, or is it Councilmember Bluefett? Thank you. So if you could get that on your calendars, it'll be at 10:30. And I don't know that we have the location figured out, but watch for that, please. Night to Unite, actually I had this on the report, but I wasn't really expecting to say anything. I know some of you participated in Night to Unite events, so I was hoping to get out of the way and let you or other members talk about it.
I will start, and then I will let Councilmember Carrie Johnson take over from there, right? Yeah, we'll do
Sounds good.
I want to thank Councilmember Carrie Johnson for being the escort service for that night and carting me around. There you go. All yours, Carrie.
Oh, okay. It was a great night. We went to 10 locations, and Officer Hughes did another fantastic job of coordinating. We got around to some other neighborhoods that I didn't remember from last time, so it was nice to see new faces. There were so many smiles and fun activities from the rec department, and it was just a great night. The weather was perfect, and I think everybody had a really good time, and I just wanted to say thank you again to the first responders and then Officer Hughes, who coordinated. It was very well done.
Yeah, it was. It was the first time I had been to the ones where they went around to the neighborhoods. I usually just went to the one down at the park when it was kind of coordinated down there. But yeah, it was kids were having fun. Yeah, I don't know, what was there, 15, 20 kids in the back of the ambulance at one time, I think.
Yes.
You know, and one on a stretcher. So, anyway, but yeah, it was well attended. Boy, there were some of those stops. There was lots and lots of people there. So anyway,
Mr. Mayor, if I could inject, I heard, got information back from not only the police department, but ambulance and others, fire department, about how fantastic it made them feel to have the kind of community support they felt as a part of that too. So that's wonderful too. So they shared that at the various meetings I've been at over the last, well, half a week or so. So it has an impact for sure.
okay.
Next one that I have, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to turn over to Pete if I may. We have seal coating project, as you know. Mayor, members, you've approved the budget and we've entered into agreements with folks to do seal coating. So Pete, that's going to happen probably this week.
Yeah, Wednesday. We're going to crank her up on Wednesday. The main goal behind a lot of our seal coating project is to provide a extra wear course on top of the street so that we can keep water from penetrating into the cracks. Water does a lot of damage for us during the freeze-thaw cycle, so our goal is to give us a little bit of extra wear, and you're really starting to see the improvements that your street crew has made over the years on how these streets are wearing and how it's coming for maintenance. So they're doing a nice job. Let me give you a little idea here. We're going to work on St. Julian to Broadway on from 5th Street to Front Street is going to be our first section that we're going to go after and attack. This is going to be a challenge for us a little bit because the fair is going to be starting about the time that we start this. So we hope that we can get in there and zip down some rock before we get too much traffic in there. The other areas we're going to work on is south of Broadway on Front Street area and then up to 3rd Street on the side streets, but not 3rd Street. So we're going to be working in both of those areas. There'll be about 100 blocks. We hope to have everything down in about 2.5 to 3 days. So if the weather stays like it is now, we're in great shape. The guys have the pattern down, they have a passion for what they do, and they will get that done in a very short time. We then are going to turn around on Sunday night and start picking up the downtown. So there'll be a little bit of inconvenience during the next few days for the downtown residents, but after that we'll have that picked up and looking nice, and then we'll be underway with collection of the rest of the area. Once the fair's done, we'll be in that area picking that up. So we anticipate getting everything rolling here in the next week. That'll be a big change.
Okay. Questions for Pete on this?
We appreciate folks' patience.
Thank you.
We know this is a little bit of an inconvenience, but the amount of time it takes for Pete and those crews to roll by their house or their driveway is really relatively short. An hour per block or an hour and a half per block, and so we certainly understand, but it is very well worth it in reducing overall costs for street maintenance within your community. It's really worthwhile.
Yep. I always tell people that go look at some of the other towns in the neighbor, or in the area, and see what some of their streets look like. You know, I mean, it's amazing, you know, that what a little preventive, proactive approach to this does.
That's all we
up-
have on that one, Mr. Mayor.
All right, so then team building opportunity?
I just wanted to mention this one, Mayor, members, at various meetings and certainly at a couple workshops, you've mentioned the challenges that councils have faced relative to COVID and being at distance, having virtual meetings. And so one of the things that we discussed was having an opportunity to talk about team building and working together. And so I think I mentioned to some of you previously an opportunity through the League of Minnesota Cities for some additional training, and that would likely occur if I could get on their list at the goal setting session. And so that's the plan right now, is to have that as one of the first things on your goal setting session. And so I'm excited about that. The person that does this work is likely to call maybe all of you, for sure a few of you, to talk about it in advance. And she'll be here at your goal setting session and work through some learning opportunities and team building exercises. So I hope you look forward to that. The League provides that as a service to communities. And so happy to be able to get on the list in a pretty quick timeline. As you can imagine, after COVID, with a lot of virtual meetings and everything, there are a lot of communities that are working in this direction. So I'm very happy to make that available here. Mr. Mayor, that's all I have.
All right.
Those items.
Does anybody else have anything they would like to share or questions at all, in general? All right. If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
It'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
Ask you a quick question that will save
Is that one
me
yours,
email
Barb?
to Ed. Not Ed.
Okay.
Sorry. Ed Lee.
I didn't remember a white one.